That's one of our translators, Alan. He's one of the many people that we work with over there in Congo. Mainly the ones that have stepped out and answered the call of what we do have been young people, people under 30, who've decided to go out and reach some of the most, I guess you could say, dangerous places. Congo, as it was mentioned, is the center. If you go ahead and put together the potential GDP of what Congo's minerals are, it would way out total the whole GDP of America and Europe put together. This place is extremely rich, and because of its riches, it does suffer because it is the center, and there's a lot of greed, not just within the different tribes and so on. You know, a lot of times I like to get rid of this lie that, you know, Africa is always at war and it's all because of the tribes. It's not just because of the tribes. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot of other nations, including even our own, who are really in a lot of ways raping the country and allowing things to stay that way. And so it really brings you back to the fact that Jesus is the only answer. I always preach to Congolese, and I also preach to Americans the same thing. We're first Christians. First, that is our citizenship, is first we are Christians, then after that we're American. First you're a Christian, then after that you are Congolese, because you have to understand that every nation, any government, it's not possible to be perfect. It's not possible. It's actually, you know, in the end, it's going to have greed in it. It's going to have those things in it because it's not a theocracy. It's led by man, not led by God. And so our vision, I'm going to go into the vision, then we're going to go into the word, I promise. It's a fivefold vision, and if you want to go to our table later and pick up a pamphlet, we have a pamphlet that really breaks it down. But our vision has to do first and foremost with prayer. We go forward and we pave the way through prayer. There's definitely a spirit over that area, and it's actually to the point where you can walk in to the area, cross the border, and suddenly feel a depression. Anything that you maybe have had dealt with in the past, it comes back when you get into that nation. And it's actually to the point, you know, we can find ourselves angry at each other. And it's like, you know, we can be there and literally be getting the same spirit that is over that coming on us. And so what we realize is we need to create a place where we can pray and change that atmosphere. Because how can we ever bring you guys and how can we ever bring people in if that atmosphere is not changed? They have to come to a place of refuge and safety. And so first we do that through prayer, and then after that we go into evangelism and then discipleship. That when we disciple the people, we're also looking for leaders. You know, we're teaching them about the Bible, but also we'd want to identify those who really have a call to be a pastor, you know, and to lead their people. I mean, that's the center of what we want to do, is to give it over to those people to lead for themselves, because the end times is coming, and America, just as any other nation, will be shaken. So what will happen when we can't help our African friends? They need to stand on their own and even help us in our time of need. And so we identify the pastors and we plant churches. And what we do is when we plant a church, our goal is also to do development. This is, you know, these are areas where there is no development. There's no health clinic. Sometimes if there's a school, it's very, very, very it's kind of a stick school. I mean, there's not a lot to offer there. So how can we plant a church and not minister to those of their needs? So what we do is we also make the church the center of the community and say, you know, if you guys don't have a good school, you can use our building. Let this building be used of any way you could possibly use it. And also we do micro enterprise and teach them how to do it for themselves instead of depending on us or depending on churches to support them. Do it for yourself. And so that's a big part of what we do, is development. And then there's another side that recently started. It was actually a vision God dropped into our hearts about 1 year ago. One of the things we see a lot there in Congo is child soldiers. And when I talk about what a child soldier is, I'm talking about anyone from the age of 7 to about 25. In Congo, in African culture, you're still a child until you're married. So Celine, you would just about be able to get out of the child bracket and go into being a woman. But over there, you're still a child until you're married. And so they consider, 25-year-olds to also be child soldiers. And so anyone from 7 to 25, and basically you'll see them holding AK-47s and a lot of times, having to kill even sometimes their own parents. They get recruited. Sometimes you can liken it to a gang in America. only imagine if the gangs just had a whole lot more political power, and that's what I would compare, these militias to. And so there's many of them out there, and what God basically said was, you're going to see these child soldiers who have been demobilized now from the army, and you're going to see them become pastors. And when God said that to us, we thought to ourselves, how is that possible? There's a bit of a problem with reaching the child soldiers because we're generally trying to avoid the militia when we go out there. You don't want to run into these kind of people. These are the kind of people when you run into, you don't generally make your way back home. And so we were like, okay, so how do we do this? And we even brought it to some of our pastor friends over there, some of the older pastors, and some of them even said, this is hands off for me. These are people who've killed my own family. These are people who've killed, my friend's family. This is where I take my hands off. I will help you, but I won't help you this far because this is dangerous. And so there was some of them that said, okay, we'll help you, but we're not going to go there. But then there were others believe it or not, most of them being young people, who said, okay, this is how you can reach them. There are people who are being demobilized. We can't necessarily get to the ones who are in the militia currently, but we can find those that are recently demobilized because maybe their militia didn't have enough money to give them enough weapons or whatever. They're demobilized. And so what we did is we went out this year to the villages and we just said, God, we're going to ask the village leaders, if they're there, tell them to come out. Tell them to come out and start spreading the word. We are sending basically messengers. It's very much like Book of Acts. You send people before you to start saying, there's people coming and they're looking for this kind of person. We're looking for those who are demobilized from the army. And when we went there, we were so overwhelmed because it was not just one or two or three that we found. We found that we found hundreds of them. And then after they began to realize that we were there for them, we even found thousands of them. It was overwhelming. Overwhelming coming out of the woods. And when we would go to some of these places, it would take a few days before it really made it around. Oh my goodness, there are whites here and they're looking for us. And so they would actually go and find our base camp. A lot of times we set up camp, we'll camp out, and they would even try to look for us and go at night, or during the morning, and suddenly we started seeing kids pop up around. And these are, people who are only a few months ago were holding a gun in their hands. And our responses from them were so different. We got to see some that were wholly filled with the Holy Spirit. Just completely filled with the Holy Spirit. And on the other side, there was a time where we went to one area that was extremely oppressed. And a kid came forth. He was about 15 years old, and he said, if you... Because what happens is the international community, the United Nations, other people, they come and no one hates to hear about a child soldier. That's one of those human rights issues. Even people who are ungodly cannot imagine that type of stuff happening. So what they'll do is they'll go in there and they'll say, okay, you just put down your guns. We'll give you cows. We'll give you sheep, and we'll give you this stuff if you put down your guns and just we'll try to give you a normal life, but they'll just give. But these kids are clearly messed up already. Giving is not the answer at that point. You have to give of your time, and you have to give of your emotions. You can't just give them bikes and cows and so on. But anyway, that's what had happened previously. And they said that they'd give, and most of the time it was a false promise. So when they saw us coming, being white, one of them said, if you aren't going to give me anything, then why shouldn't I just go back into the woods and get my guns and just come back and shoot all of you? And so